This is Mike.
And this is Beck.
And we are Brew Crime. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
This is our Halloween episode. We're back again this month. So hopefully all you ghouls and ghosts have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
This episode's theme is spooky crimes, was it?
Like haunted crimes or something like that?
Spooky or haunted crimes. Hopefully you enjoy and hopefully you're having a good Halloween. All right,
Halloween. It's my favorite. It's been months since their daughter eloped and they still haven't heard from her. That is until the stepmother is haunted by a ghostly figure.
Ooh. And you want to say what the beer is we've got paired for this story, this crime?
Mm-hmm. This beer is Redrum, a spiced red ale from Dead Frog Brewery.
Now out of Langley.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me just... So according to their website, this is a smooth red ale with a crisp hint of spice, light caramel malts, and a rum barrel-infused finish with rich flavors of toasted oak. Mm-hmm. Seasonal brew available October to March.
Sounds perfect for autumn.
Yeah. It's 5% alcohol and 18 IBU. Red rum.
Red rum. Red rum.
Definitely a deep, cloudy copper. Not quite red, but I mean, red ales usually aren't all that true red anyways. What do you say the color? Am I off?
No.
You got a light tannish head or something.
And then mine has like no head.
And mine's got
poured
like
it
a
differently.
quarter-inch ahead.
You probably poured it properly for this kind of beer, and I was just like, bloop, bloop, bloop.
Definitely got lots of spices on the nose. It's got a little bit of the caramel, like it said, and...
I had a sip already, so I'm poker facing the flavor until Mike has some.
It's got kind of a sweet aroma, too. I don't really get a lot of the rum barrel they claim on the nose, but... It's got some spices. It's definitely a red ale. I guess you can say that's sort of the rum barrel infused finish. It's sort of a tiny little hint of oak, maybe. Definitely spices. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm almost getting a hint of coconut.
Yeah. Which could be the barrel, actually.
I love coconut, so...
It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of a pumpkin ale. Just the spices. It's not bad.
I really like it. Actually, you're saying not bad, but I really like it. But I'm kind of obsessed with coconut.
There you go. I could drink a bottle or two of this, but I couldn't sit down to a bunch of them. I couldn't drink a 6-pack of this.
I could. If anyone wants to buy me a 6-pack of this, that would be... I'm fine with that.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't say no either, really. You know, there's some beers you can sit down and just drink more.
No, I totally know what you mean.
This is not one of those for me. But I could drink it again, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I really like it.
Its name is kind of pulled right out of Stephen King books. So I'm good with that, you know. The Shining. Mm-hmm. Kind of ties in with the Halloween theme.
You can cut that out. The logo and stuff is really boring.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting label. I don't know why there's a boat on a barrel on it, really. But I do like on the back that's got like the stamp seal with the Dead Frog logo in it and the 2 axes. It's kind of bringing it back
Lizzie
to...
Borden.
Well, I was thinking more, you know, Jack Torrance hitting the door.
Okay.
You know,
yeah,
trying to kill...
Yeah.
What's her name in that movie? Oh, shoot, it's been a while since I've read that book.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Trying to kill his wife, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get started with my story, then. This is Ghost Guilt or the Green-Eyed Monster. Murder in the Red Barn. If there's a horrible murder in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghost brides. Did I say something weird? Are you confused? Let me clear things up. Keep listening. William Corder was born in 1803 in the village of Polstead, Suffolk, England. Polstead was a small farming village with only 900 inhabitants. William's father was John. He was a successful local farmer. As William was the second to youngest of 4 sons, he was not expected to inherit the farm, and his father had no problem rubbing that in his face. He was abusive and insulting towards William throughout his childhood. Growing up, William went to the local school, plus an additional 3 years of private school. At private school, William was an intelligent and roguish young man. This gained him the nickname Foxy Cooper. This makes no sense, as his last name is not Cooper. I thought maybe it related to the origin of the surname Cooper, but unless William was intelligent at making and repairing wooden cups or tubs, I just don't see the connection. It's in no way pertinent to the story, though, so moving on. William was a talented writer and intended on becoming a journalist or teacher. His father intended him to become a farm worker on his farm for free. There's some mention that William became involved in a lot of petty crime at this time. These alleged crimes included passing a forged check for £93. In this day and time, that's about 9,600 pounds or 16,500 Canadian dollars. He was also accused of selling his father's pigs without permission. But, been there.
That's
right?
swine.
Who hasn't? Oh! But to be fair, there's a fair chance that these alleged crimes are just rumors that started after William's name became notorious. So whether these crimes are true or not, his actions were bad enough that his father kicked him off the farm and sent him to London to join the Merchant Navy. Unfortunately, William failed the physical exam because of his poor eyesight and decided to stay in London. This was the first of many shite decisions made by William. Like an Amish teen on Rumspringa, William took full advantage of his new freedom. He became well acquainted with Hannah Fandango, an actress turned prostitute. Acquainted. Get it? Biblically. Anyway, Hannah actually grew up near Polstead and maintained connections to a smuggling ring that was still operating in the area. Hannah introduced William to the leader of the gang, Sam Smith. His nickname was Beauty. Is that the most macho gang leader name ever?
No, but
No.
hey, why not?
Yeah. Maybe it is, though. Maybe he was so secure in his masculinity that he could really pull off that name.
Or he was so ugly it was funny.
Like an ironic nickname.
Yeah.
Maybe. He was just, brutally fugly.
Exactly.
There was actually some contradictory information about this. So, because there were some sources that said that William was kicked off the farm because he was stealing pigs with Beauty. And if that's the case, then it was actually Beauty that introduced William to Hannah, and not Hannah that introduced William to Beauty. But it doesn't really matter. It's not, super important for our story. So back to William's new and exciting life in London. It failed. London is expensive. Some things never change. Luckily for William, his father allowed him back to the farm in April of 1825. Sadly, the following winter, William's father and 2 of his brothers were stricken with tuberculosis, and the disease wreaked havoc on all 3 men. William's father died, and although his brothers survived, they were both invalids. William's eldest brother, Thomas, inherited the farm. As William was the only other able-bodied male, his status in the family rose, as did his freedom. Enter the real focus of our story, Maria Martin. Maria was born in Polstead in 1801. Like a lot of women in history, Maria got the shit end of the double standard stick. Much like today, men were absolutely not discouraged from sleeping around, while women were brutally shamed for doing so. Police statistics from the early 1820s state that in London alone there were approximately 6,500 active prostitutes. During the same time period, the Westminster Review, a quarterly publication at the time, reported the number as being between 50,000 and 368,000. There are 2 major issues with this number. Obviously, the first is that is an outrageously large range.
Yes.
You couldn't be more vague if you were trying. The second is that at the time the word prostitute not only applied to women who exchanged sexual favors for money, it could also apply to women who lived with a man outside of marriage.
That hussy.
Horrible, right?
Yeah.
Women who had illegitimate children, or women who may have had sex with men for pleasure rather than money.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
How dare you enjoy sex and not have a penis?
Jeez.
Whore. As a young woman, Maria was forced into the role of good girl. At a young age, she had been hired into the service of a clergyman in nearby Leyham. At 15, she was dismissed for levity of behavior. Don't know what that means. At 19, she gave birth to an illegitimate son. The father was William's brother Thomas. Maria's father made his living by making gloves out of moles that he caught. Not exactly on the same social level as the land-owning Corder family.
Nope.
Since Thomas was John Corder's favorite son, the whole affair was swept under the rug. Sadly, this proved an easy task for the Corders because the infant died. Unfortunately, infant death was rather common at the time. Maria was undiscouraged by this first scandal. She met Peter Matthews at a village fair in Polstead while he was visiting the local squire, Mary Cook. He was part of the landed gentry. That just means that his family owned so much land that they could afford to make a living off of rental income alone. Maria and Peter carried on an affair for quite some time. It abruptly ended, however, when Maria became pregnant. Peter agreed to pay Maria an upkeep for the baby in lieu of any further contact. Maria gave birth to a son who was named Thomas after her father, Thomas Martin. Young Thomas Martin was raised with the other young children in the household. Maria's father had remarried a woman named Anne, and Anne was only a year older than Maria. Gross. In March of 1826, Maria and William Corder had begun their relationship. At first, they tried to keep their affair a secret. Their encounters took place in discreet locations such as the Red Barn. Likely it was called this because the roof was partially made out of red brick tiles. The name would take on a much more sinister meaning just over a year after the relationship began. As William became accustomed to the idea of not having his overbearing father watching his every move, their relationship moved out into the open. It is likely that Maria's family encouraged this match. William was a good catch for Maria, and since he was not the eldest son, he was still within Maria's reach. By the autumn of 1826, Maria realized that she was pregnant again. Initially, William panicked and wanted to conceal the pregnancy. When he realized that this couldn't be done, he told Maria's parents that he could marry Maria once the baby was born. In February 1827, before the baby was born, fate intervened to complicate things further. William's elder brother Thomas died suddenly after falling through the ice of a lake near a friend's home. William was now the owner of the Corder farm.
Nice. Whatever way you can own property, right?
Yeah. Everybody die.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the farm was not doing well financially. The stress of this sudden responsibility took its toll on William. A month later, Maria gave birth to their son. Sadly, the child died within 2 weeks of his birth. Maria was left seriously ill by the difficult birth. William convinced Maria and her family to keep the whole thing quiet. They secretly buried the child. William assured them that he would still marry Maria, but in reality he was less and less sure. To complicate things further, news had reached them that the local parish officers planned to arrest Maria for having illegitimate children.
What?
I know, right?
Fuck patriarchy.
This supposed crime was punishable by a public whipping. What's the punishment for the man who impregnated her? Nothing, of course. Fucking nothing.
Having his lady whipped. That was the punishment.
How sad. William wanted to keep all of it secret. He arranged to meet Maria on May 18th, 1827, at the Red Barn, before heading off to nearby Ipswich where they could be married. The day came, and William insisted they leave immediately. Maria was worried about leaving in the middle of the day, but William convinced her that they could slip away if she just disguised herself as a man. They prepared Maria and her things and quickly left. A few days later, William returned to Polstead. Not with Maria, though. He was alone. Apparently there was a problem getting a marriage license. Maria stayed in Ipswich to resolve the matter. Days became weeks. Maria hadn't returned, and William was still at the farm. You'd think Maria's family would have inquired earlier, but they gave William some slack because the death of his two sickly brothers kept him quite busy. Once that was settled, William set off to meet Maria in the Isle of Wight, where she was recuperating from her illness. On October 18th, they received a letter that the wedding had finally happened and the newlyweds had decided to sell the farm and set up a new business in Newport. That was the last they heard from their son-in-law. Anne Martin suffered through nightmares all that winter. Local legend now says that Anne had always had a touch of the sight. When she had these dreams on 3 successive nights in April of 1828, she awoke convinced that Maria was not only dead, but was buried under the floor of the Red Barn. She told Thomas, quote, "I have very frequently dreamed about Maria, and twice before Christmas I dreamed that Maria was murdered and buried in the Red Barn." This convinced Thomas to get permission to look around the barn with the help of a friend. They found disturbed earth at the spot Anne told them. William stuck one of his mole-catching spikes into the ground and pulled it out, and when he saw human flesh on the other end, he called in more men to dig. The corpse of Maria Martin was found right where Anne dreamt. She had never left the Red Barn.
Wow.
Police were quickly brought in and took over. They retrieved a green handkerchief from the body, which Anne identified as William's. They learned of Anne's dreams and regarded it as a miracle that Maria had been able to solve her own murder from beyond the grave. Ooh. The cause of death was initially unclear. Due to a lack of reliable forensic science and the advanced state of decomposition, it was determined that she had been shot, stabbed, or strangled. It was possible that the stabbing injuries were caused by her father's mole spike. At the moment, the cause of death was a low concern. William was the obvious suspect, and it didn't take long to track him down. What was surprising was that he was successfully running a boarding house with his new wife in London. Upon moving to London, he ran an ad in the Sunday Times describing himself as a man of completely independent means. He received over 100 responses. He chose a school teacher named Mary Moore, and they were married in December of 1827, only 7 months after the brutal murder of Maria. William was arrested, but claimed he knew nothing about Maria's murder. Maria was finally buried in April. William's trial was held in Bury St Edmunds, the capital of Suffolk, on August 7th. Every hotel in Bury St Edmunds was full of people hoping to get in to watch the trial. So many people, in fact, that the trial was by ticketed admission.
What?
Classy. The prosecution claimed that William had never wanted to marry Maria and that he was driven to murder her because she knew about his previous crimes and was blackmailing him into marrying her. Their version of events was that he shot Maria and then stabbed her to finish her off. Their star witness was the ghost of Maria Martin. No, it wasn't. It was her stepmother, Anne. Anne didn't even speak about her dreams or the message from beyond the grave. That didn't stop the newspapers from covering that aspect, though. One newspaper sold over 1 million copies.
Wow.
Based on the visions that Anne had of Maria's ghost. Anne spoke about the relationship between William and Maria, William's departure from Polstead, and his behavior after he left. William's defense claimed that Maria had killed herself after an argument and that he had buried her in a panic. The jury only took 35 minutes to find William guilty.
That's really, really, really quick.
By August 11th, he was on the scaffolding. They may as well have let the ghost testify. Like, the jury had already decided he was guilty.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, he had his court date. It was 1 day
Yeah.
for a murder. 35 minutes, they decided. 3 days later, he was being hung.
That's nuts.
During those 3 days, William made a confession, but still denied having killed Maria. He claimed that he shot her accidentally during an argument. A crowd of between 7,000 and 20,000 spectators gathered to watch the hanging. His body hung there for over an hour before it was finally cut down. The show wasn't over, though. After being cut down, John Foxton claimed William's trousers and stockings, as was his right as the hangman. His abdomen was sliced open and 5,000 people queued up at the county hall to get a look at the body.
Fucking morbid.
A death mask was made, and the next day the body was dissected in front of a large audience of students. As part of the dissection, a battery was attached to William's limbs to demonstrate the contraction of his muscles. So now the spectacle is over, right? Wrong. The hangman cut the rope into smaller pieces and sold it for a guinea each. That's about $20 Canadian today.
Wow.
A lock of Maria's hair was auctioned off and her headstone destroyed by people taking pieces as souvenirs. One of William's ears, still attached to the scalp, was put on display in Oxford Street. His skull was sold to Dr. John Kilner, who was so intensely interested in the case that he had already acquired the aforementioned ear and scalp. As it turns out, this wasn't such a good idea. Bad luck followed the doctor so closely that he eventually paid to give the skull a proper Christian burial, believing that this would end his bad luck. People were so interested in the case that it is estimated that 200,000 people visited Polstead in 1828 alone. The skeleton was initially on display at the Hunterian Museum in London, but in 2004 the Corder family requested that it be taken down and cremated. A bust of William Corder still exists in Moyse's Hall Museum in Bury St. Edmunds, Suffolk. It is an original made by Child of Bungay, Suffolk, as a tool for the study of William's phrenology. It's a totally bogus study now, but at the time it was scientific. So.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder what's scientific now that's going to be bullshit 50 years from now.
Well, if we're not careful, real science will be bullshit in 50 years, so...
Good point, yeah. Sad point, actually. Anyway, the bust is on display there with an account of the murder bound in William's skin.
Okay, that's messed up.
So there's a bust of him made from his death mask, and there's a book with an account of the murder, and the binding for, like, the cover of the book is made from William's skin.
Wow.
So binding a book in human skin is called anthropodermic bibliopegy. And I'm like, why is there a word for this?
How many
Are
of
there
these books have
so
been
many
made?
human skin books that we need a word for it?
One is too many, really, but...
Yeah, but so this museum in London still has it, and they are open for tours and, like, educational tours for children. They have a Doctor Who style police box, and they do like scientific shows like The Magic of Harry Potter and the science behind Star Wars and all these other, like, they're very into making history and science interesting to kids, and I really want to go there.
Yeah, I'd probably be a little kid there, just like going crazy.
It sounds amazing. I really want to go. Yeah, so we're going to post a link on the website, and you should definitely check out their website because it looks like so much fun.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, so alternate endings. As it turns out, Maria's stepmother, Anne, may have been being dishonest about Maria's ghost coming to her in a dream.
Never.
What? It was rumored that Anne and William were also having an affair. An affair which continued after the murder. And this would explain the reason that William lingered in Polstead after the murder, even though it would have been much less conspicuous if he had just left. So, obviously this is all speculation now, as no proof remains to show how much, if at all, Anne was involved, but isn't it odd that shortly after William got married, these dreams started happening? So there are 3 real options for why these dreams started, and that is ghost, guilt, or the green-eyed monster.
Redrum.
Mm-hmm. So while I was researching this story, there was a lot of information about him. Even to today, there's still a lot of pop culture references. Like at the time, there were hundreds of plays and books and Penny Dreadfuls written about this story and how it's just really still survives in pulp culture. But when I first started reading about it, it made me think of a Tom Waits song that I love, which is this.
That's when I heard my name in the scream, coming from the woods out there. I left my door off of the chain, locked my door real good with a chair. Don't go into them barn, yeah. I said don't go into them barn, yeah.
So I love that song, and it really made me think of this, because obviously if she hadn't gone into that barn... But anyway, I was reading about these pop culture references, and actually Tom Waits has written a song specifically about this case, which I'm embarrassed to say I'd never heard before. But I just thought it was really weird that before I really dove deep into the case, there was a Tom Waits song was like one of the first things I thought about. And then as it turns out, he wrote a song about this case. But yeah, there you go.
And we'll make sure we link to the song that he wrote about the case, too.
Mm-hmm. Ghosts can help solve their own murders. Or
maybe not.
People are horrible and are perfectly willing to let other people hang for their crimes.
Never.
Depends what you want to believe. But yeah, that's my story.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my story is a little bit different, but it's still that sort of Halloween theme. So I'll give you the little teaser before I get going on the beer here. Murder, high society, racism, drug parties, torture, and a haunting. Is this a movie plot?
It's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Mixed bag.
All right. So to pair with my story, I've got Parallel 49's Lost Souls. You know, with a haunting, Lost Souls, and it's got a Grim Reaper on it. And it's a pumpkin porter, 6.5% alcohol.
Perfect.
It says on their website, all treats, no tricks. This rich, robust chocolate pumpkin porter is so good, even the living dead will indulge. The base of this beer is a robust porter that uses large amounts of chocolate malt to achieve a chocolatey flavor. Pumpkin is used in the mash along with traditional pumpkin pie spicing in the brew kettle. An English strain of yeast is used to give this beer a slightly fruity, yeast-derived flavor.
It couldn't be blacker if it tried.
I've seen blacker, but it's still opaque. It's so black. It's got a nice little light brown head. Got some pumpkin spices, some chocolate, sort of a roasty malt.
Definitely chocolatey.
There's like a hint of fruit in there in the end. Definitely lots of chocolate in the flavor. Pumpkin spices. Like it always is, like a pumpkin beer doesn't really taste a lot like pumpkin, but it has a pumpkin spice for sure.
I find this one has a longer finish than other pumpkin beers that I've had, though. Like the spices really last a lot longer.
They linger well with that chocolate. There's a minor bit of like roasted malts and maybe a hint of some smoke or something in the end, but not a lot. I haven't had this near, but it's quite nice. What do you think?
I know there's something else that I'm not sure what it is.
It's almost like a vanilla hint or something. I enjoy it though. All right, this is The Murder of Janet Smith. Is this a movie plot? Nope, it's just what is considered one of Vancouver, British Columbia's most notorious cold cases, the murder of 22-year-old Janet Smith on July 26, 1924. But what is a cold case without a cover-up? Janet Smith was born in Perth, Scotland, back on the 25th of June, 1902. Her parents were Arthur Mitchell Tuner Smith, a railway fireman, and Joanna Benzies. The family left Perth when Janet was 11 and moved to London, England. Fast forward to January 1923 when she landed a job taking care of the newborn baby of the couple Frederick and Doreen Baker. Frederick ran an import-export business that brought him around the world.
Cover. It sounds fake.
Frederick and Doreen were both from Canada, but had been living in London at the time. They brought Janet with them first to Paris, France, and then took her with them to Vancouver, British Columbia in October. She was enticed by a salary of $30 a month and the promise of a return ticket to England when she wanted it. So much money. I'm sure it was, though, in 1923. The Baker family was part of the social elite in Vancouver at the time. They lived in a home on Vancouver's west side, a fashionable place to live at the time. This location gave Janet access to Vancouver's jewel, Stanley Park. At the time, Stanley Park was itself only 36 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's just so weird.
It feels like it's always been here, but it was a young park at that time. She walked the baby in the park often, where she was able to meet the bachelor community and develop relationships from flirting to serious. It definitely seems like she was having a great time, as she was an attractive young woman from halfway around the world, accent and all.
Who doesn't like an accent?
Yeah, I don't know. Still haven't met someone.
We're married.
Not together, though.
I meant we're each respectively married to amazing women.
Agreed.
We're lucky.
But accents may or may not cut that. All right. In May of 1924, the Baker family moved from the west end of Vancouver to Frederick's brother's house, Richard. The house was located in the Shaughnessy Heights neighborhood, still one of the most expensive and exclusive neighborhoods in the city. At the time, Shaughnessy Heights was not part of the city of Vancouver, but part of Point Grey municipality. Point Grey did not join Vancouver until 1929. The house was located at 3851 Osler Avenue, but at some point that was changed to street, not avenue. Vancouver's weird. Some areas have streets in both directions.
Yeah. And they also have like streets that aren't linear.
Yeah.
And there's a park in the middle.
Richard and his wife Blanche were traveling at the time, making the space available for them. This house was quite modest for the area, as it was not a full-blown mansion, and nothing like the home where Blanche, the wife of his brother, had grown up, Highcroft Mansion.
That reminds me of Sherlock Holmes. Like Mycroft. Sherlock's brother is Mycroft.
The Bakers had a Chinese houseboy named Wong Foon Sing that worked at the house. In the 1920s, a houseboy was still the term for house cleaner or servant. Wong would become infatuated with Janet and would give her presents like silk night dresses. Unfortunately, her fairy tale move to Canada came to an end only 9 to 10 months after she arrived, when on July 26, 1924, she was found dead. Wong Foon Sing was in the kitchen peeling potatoes when he claimed he heard what he thought was a car backfiring. He looked outside of the window and did not see any cars that could have caused the sound. He looked around the main floor of the house, but when he saw nothing, he headed down to the basement. When he arrived there, he found Janet Smith lying on the floor with blood streaming out of a bullet wound over her right eye.
It's... if he thought he heard a car backfiring, it's really weird that he would keep looking and keep looking and keep looking until he found something. I'm obviously not saying it was him or anything, but it's like, if I heard a sound and I was like, oh, I'm not sure what that sound was, and I looked outside and there was nothing there, I'd probably be like,
Who knows?
I wouldn't just be like, I better keep looking until I see something that made that weird sound.
Yeah. So when he got there was a .45 caliber revolver right near her right hand. Being 1924, there was no cell phones, so Wong scrambled to get to the phone where he called Frederick Baker, his boss, to tell him of the grisly scene he had discovered. Frederick came home to confirm that Janet was dead. At this point, the Point Grey Police Department was finally called, and the constable James Green was dispatched to the home. Green picked up the weapon without a glove, making it almost impossible to get any fingerprints from the gun.
Helpful.
Yeah. The scene was not as cut and dry as it seemed, though. The gun was owned by Richard Baker, the brother of Frederick. She appeared to be shot in the head, but there was no blood or brain tissue on the walls, and no bullet to be found. Even weirder, the back of her head was smashed in.
Okay.
But good old Constable Green deemed it a suicide.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to commit suicide, I'd definitely bash the back of my head in, shoot myself in the head, take the bullet out, hide it.
Yeah.
And then lay down.
Oh, of course, yeah. And clean up the wall first, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm a housekeeper.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to leave it a mess.
After an inquest, the Vancouver coroner deemed it a self-inflicted gunshot.
Without finding the bullet.
Yeah, of course. Strangely, though, undertakers were called in and instructed by both Point Grey police and the coroner to embalm the body. This likely destroyed any clues or evidence that might have been found on the body. They could have possibly looked into if Janet had been sexually assaulted, for one thing. This is the very first time that an undertaker in BC had embalmed a victim of a violent crime without even a post-mortem being performed.
I wonder how much he was paid for that.
Yeah, exactly. They did note, though, that there was some burns on her right side that could not be explained. Oh.
That's all it said. It didn't, like, on the right side of her head, or like could it have been
right side of her body?
Oh, it doesn't say.
No.
Okay. No,
it wasn't gun residue or anything.
I was thinking, like, when a gun fires and it can burn.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. Her grave to this day can still be visited at Mountain View Cemetery in the 1919 section that is near the corner of 41st and Prince Edward Street.
You still live over there?
Yeah. Up until a year ago, I lived 3-minute drive from there.
Mm-hmm. It's actually really beautiful area.
Yeah, it is.
It's really, well, I mean, it's really quiet. You know, the neighbors aren't bothering you.
It's kind of dead.
Ho-ho!
So was it a gunshot or was it a head blow? What was going on in this case? Something was being mishandled for sure, and it only got weirder. They ended up getting a Dr. Hunter to conduct an autopsy at the city morgue. Most of the evidence had been destroyed, though, but he did conclude that there was no gunshot residue or burn marks that should have been present at the bullet wound if it was a suicide.
But they'd already embalmed her.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming if they embalmed her, they cleaned her.
I guess not.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but this placed the gun at a distance.
Okay.
He was also able to conclude that her scalp had been partially separated from her skull, and her cranium was cracked, suggesting she likely died from a blow to the head than a bullet wound.
Okay.
He still did not conclude this was foul play, though, and left it up to the coroner's inquest. They once again concluded that her death was accidental. They tried to explain away the head injury by saying she could have hit her head on the laundry tub on her fall to the ground.
Fall to the ground from where?
From the bullet when she got shot, supposedly.
But they're saying that it's too far away for her to have shot herself.
Yes, exactly. So two other Shaughnessy nursemaids, Cece Jones and Jean Haddo, that were friends with Janet Smith, would go for walks down to Angus Park to meet with her and sometimes go down to the drugstore on Granville for a refreshment. They did not believe that Janet would have killed herself. They claimed she was uncomfortable around Wong Fu Sing, who was smitten with her. That seems to be refuted, though, as Janet would write in her journal that she enjoyed the attention she got from men and did not mention Wong in her journal at all. So it seems that there could have been something going on there.
I don't know, but if she was just mentioning nice things in her journal, you know,
yeah,
it's
see.
not like the concept of, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. That's not new.
Well, all we know about her journals is that someone's read them, there's no mention of Wong, and she wrote about liking the attention from men. That's all we know, so
Okay, yep.
if we could find that journal. C.C. Jones spoke with her Reverend, Duncan McDougall, about her suspicions. The Reverend was just the wrong person to bring this up with, though. He was a xenophobic and fanatical man who rallied against the elite, Catholics, Jews, and even showed his support for the KKK.
Wow.
At his Highland church.
What a douche.
Yes. He was able to convince the United Council of Scottish Societies to get involved because the woman that was killed was of Scottish descent. They pressured the provincial government and the Attorney General Alexander Malcolm Manson to reopen the investigation. But this was not enough on its own, so the local scandal paper, the Vancouver Star, published by Victor Odlum, jumped on the case also. Mm-hmm. He was the mortal enemy of the father of Frederick Baker's sister-in-law, General A.D. McRae, who lived at Highcroft Mansion. He would print every rumor, hearsay, and speculation as a major breakthrough in the case on the front pages of his rag.
Class act.
Yeah. Odlum was just as bad as the Reverend, though, as he was an exclusionist, as he believed that Asians could not assimilate with whites, and had even run an anti-Asian platform in the 1921 federal election.
God, that's horrible.
He even wrote an editorial after the murder called, "Should Chinese Work with White Girls?" Yeah. And called for legislation to preserve white girls of impressionable youth from the unnecessary wiles and villainies of low-caste yellow men.
Wow. Like, you can't see the vomitous look on my face right now. I have nothing to say to this. Like,
to say that there was a racism issue in the 1920s in Vancouver is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a racist issue in Vancouver.
Not this deep, though.
No, I mean, obviously not like this, but...
But yeah, if you cannot read it in my voice, I think this man is seriously vile. A bill was even proposed by Mary Ellen Smith to the Legislative Assembly of BC called the Janet Smith Bill in November of that year that would have prohibited the employing of Orientals and white women in the same household. Luckily, the Vancouver Province newspaper pointed out that this was in violation of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of 1911, and it never ended up becoming law.
Oh, big shocker.
Yeah.
Some racist morons' thoughts are not at all based on logic or up-to-date laws. It's shocking for everyone listening, isn't it?
Just wait. But let's get back off this tangent. A private detective was hired to tail Wong to learn his routines, which included following him on his trips to Chinatown. On the night of August 12th, things took a different turn. Wong stepped off of a streetcar at Cordova and Corral to meet two friends. They stood there talking while a big black car rolled up. Two white men got out of the car and grabbed Wong, forcing him into the back of the car.
No, I don't like where this is headed. No.
Wong feared the worst as he assumed these men were vigilantes that thought he had killed Janet Smith. He was relieved to learn that that was not the case when he was taken to Oscar Robinson's Canadian Detective Bureau on West Hastings Street. He was then given the third degree by Oscar. Wong explained that he had told the police and the inquest everything he knew. Robinson beat him, though, and through the night to see if the story would change, but it did not, and he was released.
Okay, I'm not happy about the beating part, but at least he was released. I mean, I don't know what happened, obviously, but you don't deserve that.
No. On August 28th, the body of Janet Smith was exhumed, and a second inquest was held.
A real inquest, you mean? As opposed to... Oh, no, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
This time, though, it was concluded that she was murdered, and Alexander Malcolm Manson appointed a special prosecutor, Malcolm Bruce Jackson. This new evidence, though, did not point to a killer, but made for lots of morbid entertainment for the newspaper readers. Mm-hmm. The Scottish societies were thrilled, though, that the investigation was reopened. Months and months went by with no new breaks in the case and only conspiracy theories printed in the scandal papers.
This is why I don't read the newspaper.
I don't blame you.
It's scandal,
well, this is
not
like
truth.
This is National Enquirer level garbage, though, right?
Is there a difference, though?
Yeah, there is. May not be as big as it should be, but there is. Eventually, the inherent racism brought the attention back to poor old Wong Foon Sing. On March 20th, 1925, the Baker family reported that Wong had gone missing. Once again, the man was abducted, but this time his captors were not detectives, but men in white, pointy-hooded robes that would be recognized as the Ku Klux Klan. Tangent time. In the 1920s, the KKK had come from the United States to Vancouver to open a chapter here. For only $150 a month, or in 2018 money, $1,960 a month, they rented Glen Bray, the massive and beautiful 16,000 square foot Shaughnessy mansion that is now home of Canuck Place Children's Hospice, run by the Vancouver Canucks hockey team. This was to become their imperial palace. Their presence was not welcome, though. Immigration officials at the White Rock border tried to block their leader from entering Canada on grounds that he was undesirable.
That's good. I like that.
Now, this is a massive fucking understatement. The leader applied and got a 30-day visa and tried to respond to the allegations against his organization in the BC legislature. But Premier John Oliver refused to allow him in.
Good.
He is a hero in my books. City Council passed a bylaw outlawing masking in public, and people of Shaughnessy took steps to have the clan booted from Glenbrae. The members of the KKK held a meeting at the Hotel Vancouver, and the clan members were jeered. But before you get proud, it was not due to their racism, but because they were vulgar American vigilantes.
I'm still not against that. Booing.
They fizzled out nearing the end of the decade after their leader was deported from Canada. Okay, let's get back to the kidnapping.
One quick thing.
Yes.
John Oliver. We were both like, kudos to John Oliver.
Yeah.
There's a secondary school in Vancouver, the John Oliver Secondary School, and it's at like 41st and Fraser, in the neighborhood that we're talking about right now.
There you go. And I knew the name was really familiar.
Mm-hmm. That's why. Probably drove past school.
So it's not known if the abductors were actually KKK members, but they definitely used the outfits and tactics for their terrorizing effects.
Whether they're members or not, if they're using that stupid outfit, you're an asshole.
Oh, fuck yeah. No,
you're
just
a piece
wait.
of
Yes,
shit.
you're a piece of shit, totally. This time, Wong was held for 6 weeks.
No.
In a house on West 25th Avenue in Vancouver. He was chained and tortured the entire time, but again, his story did not change. He was finally released on May 1st, 1925. So scandal would hit, though, as it was discovered that Wong's kidnappers would include 2 Point Grey police commissioners, the chief of police, a detective sergeant, and 3 prominent officials of the Scottish societies.
Shameful.
Yep.
So fucking shameful.
These kidnappers had hired Wong Fun Sin as a translator, which outraged the Chinese-Canadian community as he was a Canadian journalist who devoted his time to civil and human rights organizations and tried to end discrimination. The Anglophones in the community were also irate as he was working with a detective agency investigating the case also. Racism would reign in this case, though, with the detective and his son being convicted and another man pleading guilty, but having a jury give a strong recommendation of mercy.
Why?
The Point Grey police were acquitted and the government barred the prosecution of the others involved. Even more disturbing, it turns out Alexander Malcolm Manson knew where Wong was being held and did absolutely nothing about it. He had hoped that the torture would solve the case. Luckily, Manson's career was severely damaged by this revelation.
You know, I often like to think how much better Canada is than America.
Mm-hmm.
Not to offend my American friends, because my American friends are the good part of America.
Yes.
So as much as I don't like to hear about stuff like this, it's still a good reminder that, you know, vigilance is what makes us good people.
Yeah.
You know, doing the right things is what makes us good people.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, we're better because we are. No, we're better because we do.
Yes.
That's the difference. Do the
Although
right
our past
thing.
was pretty dirty too.
Of course, yeah. Shamefully. But
Yeah.
it's what we do now that makes the difference.
After 2 kidnappings that proved not one thing, Wong was put on trial for murder.
Of course he was.
Yeah. But the police only had Wong Fun Sing as he was found battered and disoriented on Marine Drive from that kidnapping.
That's really far, actually.
Yeah. Well, they dumped him, right?
Yeah.
Attorney General Manson signed the warrant, but not because of new evidence, but because he thought that going through the evidence might find the actual killer. So let's charge a person that he knows isn't guilty just to try to find the real killer. That makes sense. The Chinese consul and the Chinese community were outraged at this perversion of justice, but in the racial climate of the 1920s in Vancouver, it meant nothing. Luckily for Wong, the case was finally thrown out in October with a lack of evidence. The jury went as far as to say that their findings were that there may not have been a murder at all. Again.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I agree that there was no murder at all, as I don't see, like, what reason would she have had to kill herself. And, I mean, that's not the only bit of evidence that says that this wasn't a murder, but that doesn't mean that the only not white guy is guilty.
No,
like,
exactly.
What the fuck?
Yep. So after he was released in 1926, he left the country and headed to Hong Kong, and I cannot blame him.
No.
I would leave too.
Yeah. And really, there was a bunch of racist pieces of shit that were like, oh yeah, he's running because he's guilty. And it's like, yeah, or is he leaving because he's going to be judged no matter what he does now?
Just
he's
wait
not
for
going to be
the
able
third.
to get work.
Yeah.
Because of a bunch of racist pieces of crap.
So this brought a sigh of relief for Attorney General Manson and others, as it meant that the Janet Smith case was concluded, although there was no justice.
That's not a conclusion.
No. In the end, the Point Grey Police Department, the provincial government, especially Attorney General Manson and others, had their reputation smeared, and in the mind of the general public, Janet Smith's case was confirmed beyond a doubt to be corrupt at its core. This was not the only trial to go on, though. Fred Baker brought criminal libel charges against the tabloid Saturday Tribune twice. But what fun would it be if we stopped there? I mean, there were other theories and rumors to cover, after all. One popular conspiracy theory is that Janet Smith died at a party held at the house on 3851 Osler Avenue and was found the next day. Accounts described a drug-fueled and drunken party that was more akin to an orgy. Some versions of the story say that Janet Smith was raped at this party and that authorities were bribed to cover it up as the party was attended by local elite. This story persists to this day, although Frederick Baker insisted that there was no party that night at Osler Avenue House. According to the Scotland Yard records, though, Frederick Baker was an international drug smuggler, which would hurt his credibility and reliability at the source.
Oh, wow.
In the book, Who Killed Janet Smith, written by Edward Starkins in the 1980s, he described talking with an elderly woman at Highcroft Mansion. She recounted a story told to her way back in 1930s by a nurse friend. The nurse claimed to listen to the deathbed confession of Jack Nichol, the son of former Daily Province publisher and Lieutenant Governor Walter Nichol. Jack Nichol claimed to have attended the party that fateful night. He had been romantically involved with one of McCrae's daughters, but not Frederick's sister-in-law. Supposedly, the daughter found him in the bathroom with Janet and freaked out. The story went on to say that Nichol accidentally knocked Janet Smith over, and her head hit the spigot, and it killed her. There were even more rumors that Janet Smith might have been killed at Highcroft Mansion, and then was moved to the Osler Avenue house. This can also be plausible, as where she was found there was no signs of blood splatter or a bullet.
It makes sense that then her body was moved.
This may be why in the end her spirit did not seem to spend time at Osler Avenue home, but seemed to haunt the Highcroft Mansion that was owned by the McCrae family. Why spend your afterlife haunting a small house in Shaughnessy when you can live out your afterlife in the lavish Highcroft Mansion? I guess it is only fitting that in the end the Highcroft Mansion goes to the women of Vancouver after the lack of justice in this case.
Yeah.
Today, Highcroft Mansion, located at 1489 McCrae Avenue, is home to the University Women's Club of Vancouver. This exclusive women's group promotes education, rights, and opportunities for women. So while Janet Smith may never get her justice, she can at least get the satisfaction that the mansion helps today's women achieve greatness. So if you find yourself near Highcroft Mansion and you see a ghostly figure roaming the tree-lined boulevards and the streets, be happy to know that it's not the return of the KKK, but the ghost of Janet Smith, hoping to one day get justice of her murder. Let's end on a happier note. Highcroft Mansion was known for its legendary parties, including a New Year's Eve masquerade ball. The guest book was a who's who of visiting royalty, businessmen, politicians, and social elite of Vancouver. It was an honor to be invited to Highcroft. After World War II, the McCrae family left the Highcroft Mansion and donated it to the federal government for a sum of $1. The house was to be used as a convalescent hospital for war veterans at the time. And that's it.
Is it still haunted today then, or?
As far as I can tell, yes. There's not a lot of word on it. I mean, it's not a public building, and it's not a private house either, because it's owned by the University Women's Club of Vancouver. So who knows? I'm probably not all that welcome there. But it's so sad. There's so much to that story, and there'll never be any conclusion, probably, because I'm sure most of the people are dead.
Yeah.
but always kind of spooky when you get the KKK and ghosts involved.
Yeah. Free advertisement, kind of, here. There's a lot of really good walking tours.
Yes, there
for Ghosts Vancouver, or like the Haunted Vancouver trolley tour, or even besides the haunted stuff, there's a lot of really good walking history Vancouver tours, or the Police Museum in Vancouver.
I've never checked that place out, but it looks kind of cool.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really interesting history tours here in Vancouver. A lot of really good stuff, and it's like so easy to find out about. And I mean, like Groupon and Living Social and stuff, it's like you have some free time on a weekend, go do it. It's totally worth it. It's really fun.
It's kind of amazing for such a young place as BC and Vancouver.
Yeah.
For us, you know, Western civilization that came here and stole
comparatively.
everything. Compared to Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
Just the amount of history there really is still.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. So we hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, we enjoyed presenting.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to bringing you episodes every second week instead of every month.
Fingers crossed we can keep it up.
Yeah.
So if you enjoy our episodes, send us a message on Twitter at Brew Crime, or you can hit us up on all of Pacific Beer Chat social media accounts for now at Pacific Beer Chat. Mm-hmm. You can get a hold of us at brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com if you want to email us, and our website is brewcrime.com. Thanks for listening in.
Yeah, and sooner rather than later, I will stop talking about opening a Facebook group for us and actually do it. And I realize that for any young people listening, Facebook is so last year, but I don't care because I'm old, so suck it up. I'm using Facebook.
And also, you're not a big social media person, so...
I'm just not. So.
Whereas I'm used to using social media a lot.
Mm-hmm. If you want to talk to Mike, great. But if you want to talk to me, I'll be opening this Facebook group.
Yes, or just email us and say that you want to talk to Beck, and I will forward it.
Eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
In a letter.
Snail mail.
Yeah.
All right, cheers.
Thanks.
Brew Crime's intro was created using Creative Commons Attribution Licensed Audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. This has been a production of pacificbeerchat.com.
Hey, this is Steve from Great Lakes True Crime. We tell stories from Ohio and the rest of the lower Great Lakes region. Give us a listen on your favorite podcast app. And follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Just search for Great Lakes True Crime.